So with the January 6th Commission holding public hearings, are we finally going to see Republicans accepting the fact that Donald Trump did not win the last election? Unfortunately, I'm not optimistic. Let's talk about it in today's video.
Told the president in no uncertain terms that I did not see evidence of fraud, and that would have affected the outcome of the election. And frankly, a year and a half later, I haven't seen anything to change my mind on that.
Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So you just saw a testimony that the January 6th Commission released, with William Barr stating in no uncertain terms that he told Donald Trump that Donald Trump had not won the election. I mean, this should come as no surprise to many of us. For a long time, we've known that voter fraud is minuscule, if it exists at all. And a lot of the time, it's actually committed by Republicans, not Democrats. And most of all, though, voter fraud is not the reason that Donald Trump lost the election. He lost the election because by far most of the voters voted against him. Period. End of story. Unfortunately, we continue to see polling that shows that a majority of Republicans continue to believe the big lie that Donald Trump won the last election. And the continuing perpetration of that lie is something that we all should be scared about. As I detail in another video that I'll link to at the end, spreading that lie is basically the Republicans setting themselves up to steal the next election. And if there's any clear message that should come out of the first hearing of the January 6th Commission, it's that January 6th wasn't just a little protest that got out of control. No, in reality, January 6th was just a tiny piece of a huge conspiracy involving all kinds of people all the way up to the President of the United States, who are doing everything they could to try to deny democracy from moving forward. The riot on January 6th was just the last gasp of a movement that had failed despite its repeated efforts to overturn the last election. And so in some respects, to even call the January 6th committee the January 6th committee is to really understate the importance of what happened that day. That was just the culmination of an organized coup that attempted to overthrow the government of the United States. And that coup was led and urged on by the President of the United States. And were it not for a few brave people, many of whom were Republicans, American democracy would have been dead on that day. Unfortunately, as we've seen, that effort is not over. The Republicans are continuing to try to position themselves to essentially steal the election, whether they win it rightfully or not in 2024. And support for that proposition has almost become central to the Republican Party's ideology at this point. I mean, just look at the way that they've treated Liz Cheney. Now, I find myself in kind of an uncomfortable position here. I've never been a fan of the Cheneys. I'm not just talking about her father, but her as well. She's about as right-wing as you can get. But I've got to say, she's an American hero. Her standing up for democracy in the face of incredible pressure from Donald Trump and just about everyone else in her party is really an impressive feat that's going to go down in history. She has put it all on the line, facing re-election against an angry MAGA base who want to punish her for standing up for the truth and for American democracy, something that you would think they'd be praising her for. So I've got to say, if you'd told me just a few years ago that I'd be sitting here praising Liz Cheney, I would have thought you were crazy. But here we are. Unfortunately, it still appears, though, that the Republican Party is closing ranks to try to defend itself and Donald Trump from the allegation that there actually was a coup that tried to overturn democracy. I mean, we heard the member of Congress who called the January 6th insurrection just a group of tourists visiting the Capitol, right? But when I saw the newspaper today, I was deeply disturbed. In the Washington Post, and I'll post a link to the article down below, of course, there was an article by columnist Jason Willick saying the next January 6th is happening and the Supreme Court is the target. Now, I'll tell you right now, I happen to believe that the Supreme Court at this point is illegitimate. That it's become nothing more than a group of partisan hacks aimed at delivering whatever they can for the Republican elites. I'm in favor of expanding the size of the court and reforming it with things like term limits. Unfortunately, the odds of that happening at this point, unless we have a very successful election in 2022, are slim. I'm also outraged at the way that this conservative majority that was essentially stolen, at least in part from the Democrats by Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump, is imposing its minority views upon the rest of the country. And I ultimately believe that people will react negatively to this. And what we see in areas like abortion and gun rights, for example, are going to continue to turn the public against the Supreme Court, which already views it more negatively than I ever would have imagined just a few years ago. I'm also no fan of Brett Kavanaugh, and I have both made videos and written Medium articles about how I think he is, and I quote, a douchebag. But I'm certainly not applauding the individual who went with a gun with the intent to kill Kavanaugh. And from what I understand, he actually decided before he did that he wasn't going to kill him anyway. So although he was mad, which I certainly share that sentiment, he decided that that kind of violence wasn't appropriate, which I also share that sentiment. The people who are protesting on public property, the public rights of way in front of the homes of some of the Supreme Court justices to express their outrage over the way that this court is basically imposing a right-wing dystopian agenda on America, are expressing their First Amendment rights. They're allowed to do that. And I do find it ironic how Kevin McCarthy got so passionate over defending the Supreme Court justices when he showed absolutely no compassion for children who had been gunned down by AR-15s. But what's especially disturbing about this article, though, is that it shows the conservative spin. And that spin is that, hey, January 6th is just like what the progressives do. It was just another protest that got a little bit out of hand. That's also, by the way, what Tucker Carlson said on Fox News. Because, of course, Fox News was not covering the January 6th committee hearing itself. Instead, they had Tucker Carlson engaging in revisionist history, claiming, and I quote, that January 6th was not an insurrection. So that's the direction now that they're taking. They're continuing to try to undermine the seriousness of what happened and to kind of make it seem like, yeah, you know, there was a protest, it got a little bit out of hand maybe, but hey, that's what the liberals do too. Not realizing that equating what happened in any number of protests organized by Black Lives Matter, for example, with the wholesale effort on the part of Donald Trump, the President of the United States, who taken an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, who with his people engaged in a full-fledged coup attempt that almost succeeded in destroying the American democracy, is really to engage in the height of false equivalency. The media needs to call out these extreme actors for their efforts to rewrite history. Because the truth of the matter is, if we don't hold the people accountable for what happened in 2020, we'll be dealing with again in 2024. Well, if you don't doubt that we're in serious danger of seeing democracy finally completely undermined in the 2024 election, check out this video over here. The truth of the matter is, I made that video before we even had all the information that's coming out now. And it just shows what serious jeopardy our American democracy is in right now. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.